hit the tools question again. I mean, some tools are more aware of the needs of enterprise than others. You know, you can bridge between the agile methodology and the sort of security, transparency, reporting, compliance, audit requirements of a larger organization. You can potentially do both. Especially, you know, as far as like winning over the mass population, I can't really speak to that. But you know, even if you look at AWS, like for all their talk about companies going fully to cloud, like still the bulk of the workloads in AWS are not the financial services, healthcare, like critical data stuff. Like they're still trying to get there too. So.
I think so I don't think you're ever going to win everyone to a DevOps program. I mean, in a big company, I don't think you're going to win everyone. It's like, you know, Cengage has been around how many years?
100. It's a publishing company. So
yeah, it's been,
well, it's like what's a dinosaur?
You know, and we've got our share of, you know, critically old sysads who have got no intentions of ever doing anything that helps a developer.
ALS 400s.
I mean, you're going to get that in any company that you go in. When people talk about the cultural revolution, you know, the DevOps revolution, they use those terms for a reason. You're going to shake some people up, and you know, it's long been a prophecy in the tech industry that you change or die. And these people who have hung on to their jobs through, and I'm not speaking about anyone in Cengage at the moment, but these people who have hung on to their jobs through, you know, primal knowledge or control, they're going to either change or they're going to be pushed out. And you have to, if you're advocating a DevOps program, you have to be prepared for that. You know, you have to come in, and it's not about the tools. It's not about, oh well, you know, if this bastard operator from hell learned Puppet, everything would be fine. No, because it's going to be a bastard operator from hell that says your Puppet code comes through me, and if I don't like it, I'm not going to push it. You know, you're not going to change that mentality through the tools. So it's never about tools. It's about, okay, we need people who are going to work as a team, and not just, I'm citing the operations side because that's what I know. You've got assholes on both sides of the ball. You've got the developers as well. You've got the developers who think an operations guy is there as a human keyboard for the developer, and that's their only value in life, is that they have access to things that they don't. So you're fighting to change both mentalities, and certainly coming into Cengage, I'm working against any conception that my team are simply support guys or human keyboards for developers, and I'm stressing, and this is the difference I have with a lot of startups, there is a specific skill of operations. DevOps doesn't mean no ops. You know, Netflix have got it wrong. Netflix think they're doing no ops. No, they're hiring developers who have some system skills. And they're calling them no ops and they're putting them in development teams. But there's a specific tradition of running scalable operational systems in production. And that's SysOps. And you can't do it without SysOps. And if I advise any startup, I'm like, you wait too damn late to address operations. You focus on development, you develop your shit, your stuff, you try to put it in production, and you have a problem because you don't have systems operations skills. I would advise any startup, the second or third person you hire should be a seasoned sysadmin to advise you along the way from the very beginning to develop operational code.
It's really about a cultural change, right? It really is breaking down the silos and really bringing everybody together for more collaboration, more communication, more sharing. Is that?
Yeah,
Would that be?
That's what I've been doing for years before they all even came out.
So no, so in the big organizations, a lot of times you kind of just get it by winning. You win the people over by making their lives easier, right? If you can bring some things to the table, like we're sort of a guerrilla organization at Teradata, right? Whether I'd like to admit it or not, I guess I did. But there are definitely some that not like the change. But as soon as we bring we bring this, well, we can automate all of this stuff for you, and we can make it so that you can get your code out faster, make your life easier. You get a lot more buy-in. So a lot of it's not necessarily breaking down doors. It can be, certainly. You might have to go kick some ass, absolutely. But there's a lot. I think you do catch a lot more flies when you just say, hey, look at what we did. Why don't you give it a try? I'll show you how we did it. And then they go, oh wow, I can't believe it's this easy, right? I can't
But
believe
even that's breaking down walls.
it is. It's just being carrot, not stick, right?
Yeah, it's pushing the walls over, not knocking them down.
Where would you start? You start with the development team, or you start with the development?
I'm an ops guy, so I tend to start with the ops team. Every company I've ever gone in, I've said, well, let's figure out what the hell are we doing wrong. How can we be better before we start bitching about what the developers are doing right. That's
Because
my
I gotta be honest, I've been through a lot of meetups where there's, a lot of development meetups, and I always hear developers always say, well, they don't understand, they don't know what we do, they don't know what, and, at some point I had to ask, well, who are they? And they always say, well, it's the operations team, it's the development team. So it's tough to have a conversation with the development folks, but you're saying start with operations.
I'm saying get your own team on board. If you're a developer, get developers on board.
Gotcha.
If you're an ops guy, get your ops. But start with clean your own house up.
Yeah.
Address
Bring
what
them
you're
together,
doing.
you're saying, bring them together, bridge together.
Yeah. Bring your own team together. Stop blaming other people for your own inadequacies. Figure out what the hell you can do to be better, and then start demanding that other people.
Just to tie this up, one of the big things with the people piece, and a lot of times engineers don't understand, this is where it comes with behavioral change, right? A lot of times you just add specific goals to it, and I like to tie it into SMART goals. It's, a SMART goal is something that you're able to put out there and communicating what you need to accomplish to what end specifically is where the value comes, right? It's a specific measurable change that you're trying to bring. And as Jay says, was speaking, look, this will help you in the end. Yes, front-loaded, there's going to be pain, but the results of what you're going to learn and by implementing these best practices are going to help you in the long run. People are the hardest thing to change, right? That's why I said to avoid the tools and the technology, because it's easy to get into a table, have a steering committee, meet with some vendors, and then implement a new technology. That's not the difficult part of what we're trying to do here. The difficult part is how do you influence and win your team over in making the change? And I think that's really one of the big issues that we deal with, from our meetups and in our conversations. It's just so easy to slide to the tools, to slide to what config management. But really the value key place is, how do we tie these guys in and make those subject matter experts of the databases? Yeah, they've been, operating Oracle for the last 25 years and they're not going to change. How can you influence them to kind of look through a different paradigm? That's the question you have to ask, right? And you bring it to the end result. Look, we're trying to make it easier for you. So you're not getting up at 2 in the morning when Nagio sends a monitoring alert, you got your spaghetti going on, everybody's waking up. And then the finger pointing happens, right? That's what we want to stop. And unfortunately, and this is something I see in my business, some people just choose not to change. Identifying those individuals in the very beginning, giving them the option to explaining what measurements need to happen, and setting those expectations, that becomes then the individual that you're talking to, that becomes their decision. Do they want to change or do they want to leave? It's not on you. So that's one of the things to remember, guys. As long as you're communicating what you need to do, and you're giving them the proper path and plan to follow, then it becomes out of your control, right? It's within their control to make a change. And one of the things in this business that I've learned with, because I'm not an engineer, like I deal from the other side, is engineers like to know specifically what needs to happen, right? As long as that's communicated and everything within your control is handled, don't worry about it. The only time you go to you go back to the pool and ask yourself, wait, what more could I have done? That's when that's that's on you to make sure that you've asked all the right questions, you put out all the right information, and you've given people the option to make the change. And you know what? At the end of the day, like, you know, that individual, you know, made the decision on their own. It's not on you. It's not on your team. You got to keep looking forward, keep looking to the end goal. So that's you know, kind of tie in what I do in that. Alex?
So I was just hired to a startup, and I'm currently the only DevOps guy, and we're starting out in AWS. So I think I'm gonna.
You look so young.
Hey, man, this guy's a year out of college, all right? He got it.
Not even.
All right.
So I'm trying to start out right, and there's nobody that I have to convince other than myself, and it's quite easy for me to use config management tools and all these other things to deploy stateless systems, parts of the infrastructure. Currently, my task that I'm banging my head against the wall with is making Postgres highly available and consistent because we're dealing with financial transactions. So as you can imagine, I'm a little depressed. But the problem that I've been running into from a DevOps standpoint is how do you properly make a system that is stateful, such as a database, scalable? How do you leverage these tools when you can't just shoot the node in the head because it has irreplaceable data? What kind of methodologies should I be looking at for this kind of valuable information that I just can't get rid of?
Okay, so my advice to anyone starting out, this may sound weird at a DevOps meetup. Is this on?
Yep.
This may sound weird at a DevOps meetup, but my advice for anyone starting out is forget all about DevOps. Build your systems the way they need to be. If the requirement is a redundant Postgre database, build the redundant Postgre database. Come back to it once you've got that, once you've met the requirements of what you need, start thinking about how you automate it, how you shoot it in the head if you need to, etc. I mean, databases are inherently complex. I mean, we haven't even figured out, you know, we've got a whole plan for how we shoot servers in the head at Cengage by phone. We've deliberately put off the database now. Because how the hell do you do that, you know? And what we're going to be encouraging developers to think about is how do you use inherently redundant services in Amazon as opposed to a cluster of Postgre databases? You know, can you use Amazon RDS? Can you use, you know, Redshift? Can you use some of the NoSQL technologies? These kind of things. But I wouldn't, just because everyone's telling you you need to be a DevOps engineer, you know? You're the systems operations guy in the startup. That's a valuable resource for them. Study systems operations best practices. Forget about DevOps. For 12 months, forget about DevOps. Go to DevOps meetups, talk to others doing it by all means. But forget about it. Study systems operations principles. Because without the basic principles of systems operations, you're never going to make a good DevOps engineer. You're just going to be a hack.
Not you personally.
One is just going to be a hack.
So one thing I would add to that is that I think a good step in the right direction would be that once you have achieved what you want to achieve with the system that you're building, build some test automation around that, and that enables you to then go back and refactor and improve and whatnot. And then you really have like a deployment as code, no matter how like primitive it starts out. You know, do that. And we actually run we run Postgres under the hood. We do streaming replication. We do failover. If you have a problem with a Conjure server, you take it out and it fails over. And the reason why we can feel confident in that is because of test automation, and that enables us to incorporate new ideas and upgrade to a new version of Postgres and all that. So the test automation is like really critical, and that gets you thinking more like, you know, that's like the dev part in DevOps, I think.
More questions?
Huh?
Alright, I'm gonna ask the last question. This is all nice and rosy, but what are the misconceptions you've had? What are some of the biggest misconceptions you've had, the failures you've had, the walls you've run into during this process? Just be a little brave and speak to some of those.
Speak the truth. Talk about your failures.
I already told you guys I had postpartum.
That's giving away your baby, man. When you drop the baby and then what you do.
So I'm 5 weeks in, so I haven't failed yet. But I think, I actually think there's a lot of things that the DevOps movement needs to address. And I think, you know, there's all kinds of stuff out there on the blogosphere. I mean, I addressed some of them, some of the mantras, some of the anti-patterns. Don't ever do this. This is not DevOps. If you're doing this, it's not DevOps. And it reminds me of some of the stuff of Agile in the early days, you know. And I think one of the dangers is that DevOps is becoming like Agile. It's all things to all men. And it's, you know, I read a number of blogs in the last few days when I was preparing for this talk. Don't ever say DevOps is a buzzword. Well, I'm sorry, it's a damn buzzword. It's no less of a buzzword than the cloud. And it's harming the DevOps movement. For it to be called a buzzword, because, you know, you like I say, it becomes all things to all men. And I think, you know, people used to refer to the Agile Manifesto. Even that didn't do it. And now people are demanding, like, you know, let's have a DevOps manifesto. You know, there was a very strict Agile Manifesto. It didn't stop Agile being used. I was sat in a meeting reviewing our Jira configuration, and one of the projects started explaining to me how they're doing Agile, and I said, if that's Agile, I've never done it. This is not Agile, what you're describing. You know, it's a million miles away, and unfortunately, we're getting the same thing with DevOps, to the point where you have a young guy going into a job as a sysadmin, and he's suddenly worried about how he can comply with DevOps. Screw it. Do a good job as a sysadmin. You know, and the practices come, you know, so I think, I don't know how we address this, but I think there needs to be more discussion about, you know, forget all the hype. What is DevOps? To me, DevOps is systems operations best practices, as they've been practiced over years. Or systems delivery best practices, I should say. It's delivering systems rather than software. And so it goes to, you know, the devs, the QA, the operations engineers, and product management. They have to be involved. You know, how do you develop systems that can operate in production? So I think that's one of the problems with this conception. Is the whole sort of hype that's come with it.
And I think to extend upon that, to do it early and often and iterate, right? Don't try to bite off the whole thing. We've all made mistakes, we've had to recover. The testing is the key component, and iterate, small bites, big successes. If you can have those early successes, breaking down the walls becomes easy because you can explain to them why it is in their best interest to try to do this. But yeah, I mean, that we've all had problems. I could go through the gory details, but the end product is you need to iterate and you need to test. Because if you don't test, you assume it's going to work, and without doubt, it will fail at some point.
So, I'm asking you guys, would you agree that testing is the last phase of getting good code?
Absolutely
not. It's the first phase.
It's the first, second, third, and during.
So it's all phases all the way to the end, right?
Explain some of the feedback loops that are in play.
So there's a term I read about recently about, I can't remember whether it's an Agile term or a DevOps term, because they get confused.
Best practice.
But it's a shift left. They talk about shifting left, and they say, look at your development cycle. Look at from the planning stage, the sprint planning or the Kanban planning, or whatever the hell it is you're doing, to go into production. Where's your delay? And wherever your delay is, shift it left. So if I look at what Cengage is currently doing, QA is considered an entirely separate stage to development. So developers develop feature 1. The sprint might contain 5 features. They develop feature 1, they move on to feature 2, they move on to feature 3. Not until they've done feature 5 does QA take a hold of it and say, okay, now we're going to start testing it. Meanwhile, development has moved on to sprint 3 with feature 1A, feature 2A, feature 3A. QA finds something, development has no resources to fix it. What do? They start fixing it themselves. So you're now suddenly your QA becomes completely unviable. They're not testing, they're now fixing. So what you have to do in the same way as the whole sort of mantra of DevOps is get operations people around the table as soon as possible, get QA around the table as soon as possible. When feature 1 is done, test it and release it, ideally. Don't wait for feature 2, feature 3, feature 4. If you have QA as an entirely separate thing, you're screwed. And it goes to another humorous DevOps blog that I read that said he gave these various definitions of how the DevOps guys interpreted it. And one of the ones was, to QA is just dangerous. And you can see why, because you're saying, look, you people need to come in earlier in the process, and you need to be prepared to let go and let this stuff go to production before it's being tested against every single thing in the component. And what I'm seeing is, and the discussion I'm having on the Jira revamp project made this clear, DevOps at Sainsbury's is not addressing the relationship between development and operations. I'm having my nose pushed into everyone's business within the entire company. I'm like going to QA, I'm going to be faced with going to QA teams and saying, look, what you're doing is just plain wrong. You can't do this. I'm going to be going to product management teams and saying, the way you're working is wrong. You're not planning this thing to be successful from the standpoint of releasable software. So I think all these processes have to be up there earlier. And
Release off in